Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode. Tonight we have special guests, as we always do, and tonight's program is going to feature the program Think About It with producers Anita and Anita Searles right here in the studio. So welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm so glad you guys are here. We've been talking off camera, and there's so much that you all have done in addition to this show. But let's start with this show. Think about it. So when did you decide that you wanted to come and do a show?
I had a young lady I worked with in real estate, and her name was Joanne Williams,
Okay.
and her husband Joseph Williams. They had a show going on here, which I knew nothing about. And as a result, I came down to take a look, and I realized we already had travel as part of our normal routine. Said, oh, this would be very interesting to be able to have memories that are documented in such a way that we could also share the travels with youth and anyone else who would be interested in some of the places we would travel to.
Right.
And came here, went through the classes, and managed to hold on for this length of time.
Absolutely. And it's been how long since you've had the show?
I called Rose today, and she said February 13th, 2005.
2005.
And I was surprised.
Isn't that something? That's awesome. That's some longevity. And you just mentioned that you wanted to share where you traveled. And you also said you weren't originally from here. So where are you all from?
Detroit, Michigan.
Detroit, Michigan.
But he has even a longer line of the descending areas.
Okay.
All the way from L.A.
Wow. Well, talk to us a little bit about that, because we're interested, of course, when you feature different things on your program. You know, that's, of course, an extension of what you've experienced and where you've been. So tell us a little bit about your travels, Mr. Edison.
Well, I was very fortunate. My father worked for the Southern Railway System.
Okay.
So we could get a pass to go any place we wanted to. So my brother got out of the Air Force. He was in L.A., and he wrote me a letter and says, do you want to go to Hollywood? I said, well, you know I do. In some miraculous way, my mother consented to allow me to leave home at 15.
Wow.
And I went to L.A., and I finished high school there and went to City College for a while. Then I joined the Air Force, and I got out of the Air Force. On my way back to California, I decided I was going to stay in Detroit.
Okay. Okay. So you stayed in Detroit, and then what was next after that? When you traveled, because you said you've traveled, where did you all go?
Well, we got married, okay, because that's where I met him.
Okay,
there.
in Detroit. Okay.
And we got a motorhome.
Okay.
And at that point in time, our kids were very young. Those two boys over there, their mother and her brother, and we got a Travco motorhome. And at that time, also, just before then, I was an X-ray technician.
Oh, okay.
And one of the places I worked in was getting ready to close. It was Herman Kiefer Hospital.
Okay.
And they had just gotten rid of TB. They had healed TB. That's why it's so strange for me to hear that it's back and so virulent at this point.
Right.
But there was a mobile unit, and we would literally go to the flop houses, and the guy I was working with, he would bring the people out and put them in the mobile home, and we would shoot chest x-rays and take them back to the hospital. Well, he said, go ahead on and drive the vehicle, which was about the size of a bus.
Okay.
But it was raggedy.
Okay.
And I was young, we were young, and it was fun.
It was fun.
And there were times we would go to a mall, and he said, okay, I'm gonna drive there, okay, because we didn't have to go to the hospital base. And he'd be there one day, I'd come the next day, and do the x-rays of the people in the mall that would come up. And if I wanted to go shopping, he would come out there and he would shoot the pictures. He was not an x-ray technician, but all they had to do was push their chest up there, okay, and then but in the meantime, the third day, then I would drive the vehicle back to the site, the hospital site.
Okay.
so I had learned to drive it. So when we got the first motorhome, I knew how to drive it. It was
Wow.
made exactly like it. It was a Travco.
That is interesting. And so you traveled in the motorhome with your young kids to different parts of the United States.
That's correct.
And with your background, Mr. Searles, as a photographer, right? You just start taking pictures of everywhere you went?
Well, let me answer your first question. First,
Okay.
you asked me where have we been.
Right.
We traveled as far north as San Francisco, California,
Okay.
Toronto.
and naturally we went all up in Canada.
Wow.
Oh yeah, we wore Canada out.
You did.
Yeah, and then we left there and we went as far south as Death Valley,
Okay.
Yellowstone.
Okay.
Okay.
Went to Tijuana, Mexico. Woo!
Wow.
Well, we
We
didn't
won't
know
talk
any
about
better.
that.
Okay.
When we got to El Paso, instead of renting a car and going over there, we drove the motorhome over there.
Well, you had it, right? That was
that
smart.
was kind of risky.
But that's another country.
Oh, okay.
You needed special insurance to cross the border.
Tijuana is
see.
rough.
But the good Lord was with it. We just didn't know any better. But we got there and we got back and we found out later we'd done something dumb. Then, we went all out in the major national parks.
Okay.
Then we traveled Texas, South Carolina. We went to Tuskegee, which was an experience. We got a chance to go to Tuskegee Institute. We saw the place where the Tuskegee Airmen flew,
Wow.
and we took pictures there.
That's amazing.
And then all around North and South Carolina, and all back up to the New England states, the lower New England states. What happened was my degree was fine arts, so I always looked at photography from an artistic point of view
Okay.
instead of a documentary,
I see.
and did a lot of abstracts.
Okay.
And when we decided to relocate to North Carolina, I discovered one day we had to eat. So
Right.
I found out abstracts didn't buy any food, but people did.
Yes.
So I started I cheated on my clients. I did character studies.
Oh, okay.
I'll be very candid with you. I did character studies.
Okay.
And the people, they would flip over the picture, but they didn't know why. Instead of shooting a flattery picture, I would shoot a character study. So I made sure my image had something to say about that person.
Okay.
I was making a statement.
I see.
So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
So you were basically doing visuals that made people think.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
right.
So is that how you came to name your show? Think About It?
No.
How'd that happen?
I was an X-ray technician.
Okay.
So I used to say, well, he shoots the outside and I shoot the inside.
Okay.
So when we got here, then I went into real estate. I had my broker's license,
Okay.
which is how I met Joanne and her husband.
I see.
So when we decided that we were going to continue traveling, I said, well, I want to do a show that young people can look at and enjoy, but also anyone who's interested in traveling. And I just came up with the thought of, okay, think about it. And that's what it's been called the whole time.
All right. So just think about it. Think about where you want to travel, where you want to go. Think about whatever you're presenting on the show. And some of the things you presented on the show, you mentioned your grandchildren. They did youth skits. They've done interviewing. So tell us a little bit more about that, because it sounds like they were following in your footsteps somewhat.
Well, when they were younger, I would get them, their sister, and because I had the three of them were here, and then the neighborhood kids, whatever child I could grab a hold to, and I got a lot of the material from. I wanted it from a Christian perspective.
Okay.
Okay, and they would do the skits, and a couple of them were done here way back then.
Okay.
And you'll see them at that point in time. And then they traveled with us a lot to some, to the museums and what have you, and the zoos, and because I like stuff like that,
Right.
and it was interesting for them. And he was always my husband would always do commentaries and what have you, and I would be using the little video cameras, because we moved from the big cumbersome cameras,
Yeah.
movie cameras, and they were compressed in size, so I was able to do that.
Right.
And
right.
that's how I started, along with the real estate, to also be doing videography.
Oh, that's amazing. And you just now alluded to going from the cumbersome movie cameras to the more compact cameras. So tell our audience more about what you have done regarding films and using the different equipment.
Let me intercede here.
Yes.
What she neglected to tell you, she has taught school from high school down to junior high school.
Wow, okay.
Okay. And
Well-rounded.
she's taught Sunday school.
Yeah.
And she's also taught vacation Bible school during the summer.
Okay.
And we both have practiced trying to pass on to the other generations things that we've learned that they may not have gotten a chance to experience.
Yes, sir.
So this was her method. I guess she was doing a lot of documentary too, with the camera.
Yes.
Because she told me, she said, well, I want to capture this so I can put it on the show.
Yes.
And wanted the kids to see, because the kids saw some things that they wouldn't have seen. And I know the kids were watching, because I had a kid that come in my office one day, and I was getting ready to photograph him, and his mother said, he says he knows you.
Wow.
And I said, I've never seen the kid before. It didn't take long to figure it out. The kid had been watching the program.
Yeah.
And he had seen me on a couple of shows.
Wow.
And you know how kids can remember things.
Yes, sir.
So it was impressing the kids.
Yes, sir.
And then we got our grandkids over there to act out some roles.
Yes.
And we tried to say something to our children.
Yes, sir. But the fact of the matter is how they are still engaged, and they're still, just remembering what they did. And then, like you said, other children out in the community recognize you and they're watching. You never know who's watching.
That's true.
Yeah. And the fact that you all have this passion and just consideration to think about the rest of us who have not seen what you've seen, who have not been where you've been, I think is so important. It's so important. And I do want to know, what other feedback have you gotten in addition to that parent and the son, the youth? What types of feedback have you gotten maybe on specific programs?
Well, one of the things in particular, I didn't expect a lot of people to see this program. Okay, cable TV, whatever it was. But frequently the kids would say, my grandsons, in fact, said, someone told me they saw me on TV,
That's
or
so
he'd
cool.
come,
Yeah.
or something like that, which means somebody out there has seen something.
Right. Exactly.
It's a way for me to keep the memories of some of our trips, but also like tossing a line out there, because you never know, maybe a child would be homesick and watching their parents have them on cable TV that day.
Right.
Because I didn't really like a lot of stuff that I would see on TV now. And I said there may be parents who are also directing their kids to look at something that might be a little safer, what have you. And that worked out.
I like that. I like that because I feel the same way. I don't have kids, but I feel like everybody else's kids are mine. I feel like we're part of the village. And we want to be able to, pour into them, especially whenever you're in a generation that you've seen some changes. Like my generation, I've seen some changes. And I know the generation now, they have all they've known is the digital age, right? All they know is social media. But if we could go back again, when you all were talking about the things that you've seen change in technology, what about with culture and with our society, America compared to Canada, and a lot of the things, civil rights things that you all may have experienced and seen? Talk to us a little bit about that to help our generations,
Well,
understand.
let me give you an example.
Yes, sir.
We went to Columbia, South Carolina about 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
We went to a museum there. I didn't even know existed when I lived there.
Really?
Not to speak of the fact that we weren't even considered nothing but janitors. You follow me?
Yes, sir.
So it was quite an experience to see the transitional changes. And then I went back to Columbia one time to get my birth certificate. And the lady looked like you.
Really? She did.
You understand?
Okay.
Blew me out the water.
Yes, sir.
I just never saw us in these types of positions.
Right.
So, these are some of the transitions I've noticed. Of course, there were numerous others, but that was one. But I want to bring up a little point, and I think it's kind of cute. I don't know where the idea came from, but I had a friend of mine to come in and run a class for me. I was commissioned to citizen school.
Okay.
I taught there for 2 years. They wanted me to teach photography. I said, well, now, I'm not going to teach no photography. I said, but I'll use that as a medium
Okay.
to get a point across why they should be attentive in school.
Okay.
So I had this guy to come in and show the kids what happens if you don't finish high school, if you do finish high school, and if you go to college, and show the pay level. So he came in, he made the presentation, you made X amount of money if you finished high school, didn't, and X amount if you did, and you lived in this area, and etc. So at the end of the class, one girl asked the guy, well, what house do you live in?
Okay.
But it made an impression, but I didn't think a lot more about it. So at the end of the class, they had them to write a little scenario about what they thought about me as an instructor. And this one girl floored me. She almost never had anything to say. I can't believe how impressed that child was with what we had presented to them.
Wow.
And I kept trying to emphasize, this is why you should do your math. This is why you should read your books. This is why you should learn how to write. There's a reason. So I associated everything with photography.
Look at that.
I said, you can't be a photographer unless you can master these skills. And, I just wanted to share that, you don't know who you are impacting.
Right.
But you need to do all that you can to get our kids motivated.
That's really good. And that's encouraging. That's very encouraging, because I think that sometimes, just as people, no matter what age you are, people feel like they need to have a purpose. But especially our young people, they need to have purpose, and they need to know that someone cares about pouring into them as they figure out their purpose. And not to go by what it looks like, right? Because you didn't know she was even being impressed. She was so quiet.
But she almost never asked any questions, She was just always quiet. But when I read the card that she made, it floored me.
Wow.
I just found it difficult to believe.
You said the card.
But they had them to write a little card, make up a card, or it was an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and they put what they thought about the class.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
But she did hers in the form of a card.
Okay.
And she put an image on the outside.
Wow. Similar to the fact that you were using images.
Yes.
And visuals, it seems that visuals capture more attention anyway. So it's amazing that that's what you have been using with photography, with film, and then with this show. So that's amazing. Another show you talked about, or that you did, was focused on the Levine Museum. And I know you said you like that kind of stuff, going to zoos and museums. But here in Charlotte, where we're headquartered, what did you feel was important to show at the Levine museum of the South?
It started back with the old-fashioned houses,
Okay.
and where they had wood-burning stoves. They had chamber pots, another word for a slop jar. Okay. And what happened with me in growing up, I was, from Detroit, but I was blessed to be sent south every year. So I had a chance to see two different lifestyles, and I really liked the South.
Wow.
I reached a point where I became more verbal, and therefore they couldn't send me back. Because when I wanted to know why I had to go to the back of the bus, this was right after the time of Emmett Till.
Oh, boy.
Okay?
Yes.
See,
ma'am.
somebody should have grabbed that child and expressed, what you got here is not there. Your behavior is different. I'll just say, me being a girl, I was more obedient, okay? But I loved it here. But when I got to that point, they did not send me back. But it had put something in me that I didn't realize. So when we were going through the change in value system in Detroit, I got this yearning or urge to go back south.
Wow.
Then I also had moved toward wanting to live in nature more and what have you. And I knew it came from that background. Okay. So again, I believe we would recognize as the beginning of the reverse immigration.
Yeah.
Because we were one of the first to come south from the north.
Yeah.
And everybody said, they thought he was forcing me. And I was like, no, I want to go.
Right.
He got offered a position in, was it somewhere in California?
San Jose.
San Jose. I was like, no, we're going south. I mean, I wanted to go south.
Wow.
But when we got here, we had to go through a humbling. The attitudes and, I had to learn where people here, okay, we're from an environment where materialism was so prominent. People here might be wearing some coveralls and chewing on a straw, but they could buy and sell you backwards and forwards. Okay,
Right.
so you had
I've
to
heard
learn that. We used to come south in the big, shiny cars, and they, thinking that was what it was all about.
Right.
But I had learned otherwise by then.
Right.
And I loved the peace of the South. I love land. They ain't growing no more dirt. So get you a piece of land.
Right. Yes,
But
ma'am.
from my environment, they thought I'd lost my mind.
I bet.
They said, oh, she'll be back. I haven't looked back. And
Well, I thought she lost her mind.
we've been
too.
here 44 years and I have never looked back.
IBM offered me a job, top paid. They were going to buy my house and buy me another house in San Jose and give me comparable money to go with the house.
Okay.
So I came home that night and I said, well, the man told me they want me because I had a skill that was unusual. And I said, where do you want to live? San Jose or go down south? She said, down south. Kept on in the kitchen. I got that one.
You got that one. So you turned that job down and found something else in the South.
No, we didn't have anything here.
So you just came on faith.
We were young and wild.
Okay.
We're talking
Well,
44 years ago. We were
Okay.
not afraid of anything back
Okay,
then.
okay.
I wouldn't do that now.
She would encourage me and tell me I could do things that I didn't know that I could do.
Okay.
And I was crazy enough to try it.
Well,
And all along, the good Lord has
Been with us.
guided and directed us
yes.
because, again, even when we didn't know, He was guiding and directing us. And that's what we
Yes,
know has
ma'am.
happened.
Oh, I'm loving hearing just how perfectly you all were matched, and how y'all partners.
How the
Partnership.
Lord put us together.
Yes.
But we're extreme opposites.
well,
that's the thing.
That you've always heard, opposites attract.
Well-
but what you have, he doesn't in terms of, because when talk about the weaker vessel, the woman is not the weaker vessel mentally and spiritually and physically sometimes. and emotionally sometimes. But, you know, when it comes to pairing up what you know that, and what the Lord knows that he wants to get out of you, so it's amazing.
Well, we came here on a Sunday before Labor Day. Moved our furniture into the place on a Monday, the apartment. Tuesday, we put our kids in the Catholic school, two of them.
Wow.
No job, no income, no nothing. And they never missed a day.
They never missed a day. That's all right.
The way we operate.
That's all right.
There have been mountains and valleys now. Okay?
Yeah,
But he brought us through.
Listen, I can relate to some of those because I've gone to places where I felt like I was supposed to go with no job, and then doors just opened. And I love hearing your experience, because the things that you have been through, and the way that you all have carried yourselves with just the faith and the dignity, and then the adventure is very encouraging.
Right? I'll show you how God works with it, worked with us. We went out to buy a used sofa out in Waxhaw someplace. The man turned out to be an IBM executive. We had no way of knowing it.
Okay.
And slipped up and made mention that we had just started a business and moved into town. And photography was our business. The man said, take this card and send me something about your company. We sent him the card. He gave us the card. We sent the letter in. She did the paperwork. And we got a huge contract for years from IBM. From
Look
that.
at that.
We didn't even know which way to approach to get into the structure.
Just going to get a sofa.
And
That's
then
all right.
we photographed the Federal Reserve Bank when it was being constructed here in Charlotte. We did Philip Morris for 4 years, did aerial and ground photography for them. I mean, we were just doing jobs. I mean, we were just busy. But we never stopped and thought about what a risk we had taken.
Right.
And our kids never missed a day of school, and they went on to college, and they all graduated too.
That is so awesome. You know, we could just go on and on and on about all of the experience that you have had that has, of course, poured into this show. And maybe there will be a part 2, but I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, and it has been so, you know, refreshing to hear. And I'm looking forward to seeing more on your show. Maybe your grandkids can start interviewing you and put something on future shows. Maybe.
That's a thought.
That's the thought.
That's the
All
thought.
right, well, we'll just,
It's a good thought.
plant that seed.
Think about it.
Yeah, think about it. Think about it, grandkids. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you next time right here on CMPAC Spotlight.